Sometimes the news story just hits you and you can't shake it. That's how I felt when I saw that photo of Just Leideckers. Convicted drug traffickers just casually there at a religious service in Sierra Leone. And it's like right in the background of a post by the First Lady on her own social media. Crazy, right? So today, we're doing a deep dive on this international fugitive, trying to figure out, well, who is he? How did he end up in Sierra Leone? What does this mean for organized crime, really?
I think what's really fascinating about this case is how it kind of pulls back the curtain on the world of international crime. It's not just about one guy on the run. We're talking cocaine trafficking, possible political ties, even a missing person case that's gone cold.
Okay, so let's break this down, starting with Leideckers himself. He gets sentenced to 24 years, but in absentia, meaning he wasn't even at his own trial. The charges: smuggling 7 tons of cocaine and ordering a hit. That's not exactly small-time stuff.
No, not at all. And to understand how someone operates at that level, you have to look at the world of aliases. Leideckers, he's got a couple. Omar Sheriff and Boljos, which translates to Chubby Jose, I think. These nicknames, they can actually tell us a lot about his network, how he works.
So there's more to it than just like a colorful detail.
Right, think about it. In the criminal world, aliases are a tool. It lets these guys separate their activities, control information, even create different personas for different situations.
So like Omar Sheriff sounds, I don't know, powerful, maybe even intimidating. But then Boljos is almost disarmingly casual, right? Almost like he's playing two different parts.
Exactly. It's all about perception. He's not just hiding, he's shaping how people see him. And that level of planning is why he's such a high priority target. Europol's even offering 200,000 euros, a big reward for info leading to his arrest.
Wow, that's serious money. They definitely want to find him. But how does a convicted drug trafficker, from the Netherlands no less, just end up in Sierra Leone? And he looks pretty comfortable there, comfortable enough to be at a big event like that.
Well, that's where we start to see the link between Europe and West Africa in the drug trade. For years now, West Africa has been a major transit point for cocaine coming from Latin America on its way to Europe.
Why West Africa, though? What makes it so vulnerable to these organizations?
Well, it's complicated, a bunch of factors. You've got borders that are, pretty porous, hard to keep track of everything and everyone moving around. Then there's the economic situation, lots of poverty, lack of opportunity. It makes people desperate, vulnerable to recruitment by these criminal groups. And then, unfortunately, you've got corruption at different levels, from government to law enforcement, and that can make things a lot easier for these illegal activities.
So it's like a perfect storm of factors making this kind of operation possible. And there was that incident recently, the Sierra Leonean embassy vehicle caught in Guinea with suitcases full of cocaine. That kind of brings it all home, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a big red flag. Shows just how much influence these networks can have. And if you put that incident next to Leidecker's supposed activities, well, it makes you wonder how deep the corruption goes.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. And it makes you think about Naima Jalal, that woman who vanished in Amsterdam after getting into a car.
Ah, that case. That's where things get really dark. They never found her body, but intercepted messages, they seem to point to Leidecker's being involved.
And they think she was tortured and killed. There were images, apparently, on a phone seized in a different investigation, hinting at what happened to her.
Investigating these kinds of crimes, it's incredibly difficult. You've got evidence all over the place across different countries. Witness intimidation is a constant threat. And getting different countries to work together, well, that can be a slow process, lots of red tape.
Sounds like an uphill battle, especially when you consider how powerful, how far-reaching these international networks are.
It is. But finding justice for victims like Naima, it's crucial. Her story, it shows the real human cost of this trade. It's not just about money, it's about people's lives being destroyed.
It's a good reminder that behind all the headlines and the crazy stories, there are real people being hurt, families torn apart by this. Okay, so let's go back to that photo op, that presidential event. How did Leideckers just show up there? Seemingly no one even noticed him.
That's the million-dollar question. Was it a security failure? Was he showing off his power? Or was it something else entirely?
It's hard to believe he just blended in. He's not exactly inconspicuous. Was he really that bold, or did he think he was untouchable?
It definitely shows a level of confidence, arrogance maybe. It makes you wonder if there was some kind of complicity going on, or at the very least, a major failure of intelligence and security.
And what does this mean for Sierra Leone? for the country's political scene. This isn't just about one guy on the run. It's about the public's trust in their government, in their ability to keep people safe and uphold the law.
That's a crucial point. This incident, it could really shake people's confidence, make them question whether the government is serious about fighting organized crime. And that photo, shared by the First Lady herself, well, it puts a spotlight on a much bigger problem.
It's like something out of a movie, but with real consequences.
And those consequences, they go beyond Sierra Leone. Leidecker's, what he's supposedly been doing, his presence in West Africa, it shows how big these criminal networks are, how they operate across the globe, and it shows why international cooperation is so important if we want to stop them.
It's like we're all connected, even to things happening far away.
Exactly. What happens in Sierra Leone, in Amsterdam, anywhere, it can affect us all. That's why understanding cases like this is so important. It helps us see the big picture, connect the dots, start asking the right questions.
Well, we've definitely uncovered a lot of dots to connect in this deep dive, from aliases and drug routes to political fallout and a disturbing unsolved disappearance. This case has it all. But we're not done yet. When you come back, we'll dig deeper into what this means for Sierra Leone, for West Africa, and for the global fight against drug trafficking. Stick with us.
Yeah, there's a lot more to uncover.
We've been talking about Jos Leidekkers, his journey from the Netherlands to Sierra Leone. And this whole thing has really opened up this discussion about international crime and, well, what role does West Africa play in it all, right?
What we have to remember is this isn't just about one guy, one fugitive. There's a much bigger system at work here. Leidekkers, he's just one part of the network that stretches across continents, taking advantage of any weakness it can find.
Right, and you mentioned before that West Africa has become this, key transit point for cocaine.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more? Why is that? What makes this region so, susceptible to these operations?
Well, there's no easy answer. It's a bunch of things together. Geographically, West Africa is kind of in the perfect spot. You've got South America, where the cocaine comes from, and Europe, where they sell it. West Africa's right in the middle.
So it's like a natural stop along the way for the traffickers.
Yeah, exactly. And then you add in weak law enforcement, borders that are easy to cross, and not enough resources to keep an eye on these huge coastlines. It's just, well, it makes it really hard to track what's moving through the goods, the people, the money. Criminal organizations, they can operate pretty easily without being detected.
We also talked about corruption,
Yeah.
right? And how that helps these activities along. Is that a big part of the problem, too?
Oh, absolutely. Corruption, whether it's in the government or in law enforcement, it makes things a lot smoother for these trafficking operations. Shipments can get through checkpoints, no problem. Information can get buried. Investigations, they can get stalled or even shut down completely.
It's like the whole system is kind of set up for them to take advantage.
Yeah.
And that incident with the Sierra Leonean embassy vehicle, the one caught with those suitcases full of cocaine, that's a pretty clear example of that, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It shows how these networks can get into, well, even legitimate institutions. And it makes you question how effective the whole fight against drug trafficking really is. We need a different approach, something more comprehensive.
It must have a terrible impact on the region, right? Not just the drug trade itself, but, everything else that comes with it.
You're right. It's not just about the drugs passing through. It's about how these networks undermine, well, everything. They erode trust in the government, they fuel violence, and they take resources away from things that people really need, like healthcare and education.
And we can't forget about the people who are hurt by this, the human cost. Naima Jilal, the woman who disappeared in Amsterdam. Her story is just heartbreaking. It reminds us that real people are suffering because of this trade.
It's a tragic case. It shows how brutal these criminal enterprises can be, how little they value human life. And it also shows how hard it is to investigate these crimes, to bring the people responsible to justice.
You said before that the evidence can be scattered across different countries, that witnesses are afraid to talk, and that getting international agencies to cooperate, well, it's not easy. It doesn't sound like there's much hope of actually holding these guys accountable.
It's a difficult process, that's for sure. You've got issues with jurisdiction, different languages, different legal systems. It can all create roadblocks. And then there's the issue of resources. A lot of countries in West Africa just don't have the money or the infrastructure to fight these sophisticated networks effectively.
So what can we do? Is there any way to break this cycle, to stop the exploitation and bring these criminals to justice?
It's not easy, but there are things that can be done. One of the most important is strengthening law enforcement and the judicial system in West African countries. They need better training, more resources, more support for the people who are actually fighting this on the ground.
But wouldn't that take, like, a huge investment and a lot of political will?
It would. And that's where international cooperation comes in. Developed countries, especially the ones where these drugs are ending up, they have a responsibility to help build capacity, to share knowledge. It can't just be about catching and arresting people. We have to address the root causes of the problem, the things that make this region vulnerable in the first place.
So things like poverty, lack of opportunity, political instability, all that.
Exactly. We have to address those things if we want to break the cycle. We need to invest in education, create economic opportunities, and promote good governance, transparency.
So it's a multifaceted problem, and it needs a multifaceted solution. It's not just about law enforcement, it's about development, education, social change.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We need to create a future where young people have real choices, where they don't feel like they have to join these criminal networks, where communities can stand up to exploitation, and where the justice system is strong enough to hold criminals accountable.
And this all ties back to Joe Slidecker's, doesn't it? His being in Sierra Leone, it started this conversation. It's put the spotlight on this problem. But what happens now? Will this case be the turning point in the fight against drug trafficking in West Africa?
That's the question, isn't it? What happens with the manhunt for Lydeckers? It will have an effect, for sure. If they catch him, if he's brought to justice, it could be a real sign that Sierra Leone is serious about this. It could disrupt his network. And it could give authorities some valuable information.
But what if he gets away? What message does that send?
Well, if he escapes again, it'll be a big setback. It'll show that these networks are, well, they're really dug in. And that they're hard to take down, even with everyone working together. But even if Lydecker stays free, this case has already done something.
You mean by getting people talking about it?
Yeah, all the attention. It's forced governments and organizations to acknowledge the problem. It started discussions, it's led to new investigations, and hopefully it'll lead to stronger efforts to fight drug trafficking in the region.
It's like they say, right? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Sometimes just shining a light on a problem is the first step to fixing it.
Transparency, accountability, those are key. And the media, public awareness, those play a big role too. If we keep the pressure on, if we demand action from the people in charge, well, maybe we can create an environment where these networks can't operate so easily anymore.
So even though we don't know what's going to happen, it seems like this case has, at least, shifted the conversation. It's shown us the weaknesses, raised some tough questions, and hopefully it'll lead to some real action.
That's what we can hope for. The stakes are high, not just for Sierra Leone and West Africa, but for everyone. This fight against drug trafficking, it's a fight we all have to be part of, and it takes collaboration, commitment, and a willingness to tackle all the things that allow these networks to flourish.
This whole case, it's a reminder that even something that seems small, like a photo on social media, can have a big impact. It shows how connected we all are and how what one person or one institution does or doesn't do can have consequences all over the world.
We're all part of this, whether we realize it or not. And understanding that, understanding how these systems are connected, that's important if we want a world that's more just, more fair.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? From the details of Lydecker's case to the bigger picture in West Africa, the global fight against drug trafficking. We've talked about some really tough issues.
You know what's really stood out to me about this whole Lydecker's case?
What's that?
It's really sparked a conversation about things, things people didn't really want to talk about before. Like, we've all seen that picture of him just hanging out at that big event. And it's like, whoa, this is real. It's not just something we read about in the news. It's right there in front of us. It's challenged what people thought they knew, and it's definitely brought drug trafficking to the front of everyone's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows how powerful social media can be, right? I mean, who would have thought a photo on the First Lady's page would lead to this whole international manhunt, this whole uncovering of criminal activity?
It's amazing, isn't it? It's a reminder that in this day and age, information travels fast. And being transparent, well, that can be a real force for change.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big question remains, what happens now? Will they catch Lydeckers? Will this actually be a turning point in the fight against drug trafficking in West Africa?
It's tough to say what the future holds, but whatever happens with this case, it's going to have a big impact. If they do catch him, if he's brought to justice, that could be a huge shift. It'll show that these networks, these criminals, they're not untouchable.
But what if he gets away again? What message did that send?
Well, if he manages to disappear again, that would be a big blow. It would mean these networks are even more powerful, even more entrenched than we thought. It would make you wonder how serious everyone is about tackling this.
Right. So the stakes are really high. It's not just about one guy, it's about the future of Sierra Leone, of West Africa as a whole. And really, it's about the global fight against organized crime.
It really is. And it comes down to the choices we make as individuals, as a society. Do we just look the other way, pretend it's not happening? Or do we demand better? Do we support the people fighting this, trying to make things better? Do we address the underlying issues, the poverty, the instability? Do we hold our leaders accountable?
This deep dive has taken us on quite a journey, hasn't it? We've seen a glimpse of this world, this dark, complex world. And honestly, we're left with more questions than answers.
That's often how it goes with these things. I think the point of these deep dives isn't always to find all the answers. It's about getting people curious, making them think critically, and maybe empowering them to keep learning, keep exploring these issues on their own.
Exactly. We've looked at the facts, we've talked about how complex this all is, and we've seen how real the human cost of this trade is. But the story doesn't end here. The fight for justice, for a world where things are fair, well, that never really ends.
No. And it's a fight we all have to be part of. We need to stay informed, we need to have these tough conversations, and we need to do what we can to change the systems that are causing these problems.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one last thought. What if this case, as crazy as it is, what if it's just the tip of the iceberg? What if these criminal networks are even bigger, even more corrupt than we realize?
It's a scary thought, but it's a thought we need to sit with. It should push us to be more vigilant, to ask tough questions, and to demand more from our leaders, to demand transparency and accountability.
Because making the world a better place, well, that starts with each of us. It starts with staying informed, with talking about these issues, and with taking action, even small actions, to build the kind of world we want to live in.
The journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and never stop searching for the truth.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.